Fiancé takes me to buy a diamond ring for my engagement, but we bump into a woman who calls him a cheat. I was the one who called her there. I'm a 28-year-old woman, and I've been living with my fiancé, Owen, 29M, in a nice apartment that my father gifted me when I turned 21. I've been in this place since before I met Owen, and it's been our home for the past couple of years. I thought everything was perfect, but now I'm not so sure. Let me give you some background on our relationship and what's happened recently. After graduating college with a degree in marketing, I immediately started working at a mid-sized advertising firm. I've always been pretty smart and driven, so I quickly landed a good position as a junior account manager. Most days, I drove to work in my reliable old Honda Civic, but sometimes I'd grab a shared cab to save on parking and do my part for the environment. That's actually how I met Owen. It was about 3 years ago, in the middle of a hectic week at work. I was running late for an important client meeting because my car wouldn't start. In a panic, I called for a shared ride. When the car arrived, there was already another passenger inside, Owen. He had this friendly smile and offered to move over so I could have more room. We didn't talk much during the ride because I was frantically reviewing my presentation notes, but I remember thinking how thoughtful he was. In my rush to get out of the car when we arrived downtown, I accidentally left my purse behind. I didn't even realize it until I reached for my wallet to buy a coffee after my meeting. I was freaking out. Not only were all my cards in there, but also a significant amount of cash I was supposed to deposit at the bank for my mom's small business. Later that afternoon, I got a call from an unknown number. It was Owen, saying he'd found my purse in the shared ride and wanted to return it. I was so relieved I could have cried. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop near my office after work. When I saw Owen walk in with my purse, I felt this wave of gratitude. He could have easily kept the money. It was nearly $2,000 in cash. But he didn't. We ended up talking for hours over coffee. He was charming, funny, and seemed genuinely interested in what I had to say. Before we left, we exchanged numbers, just in case. After that, Owen and I kept bumping into each other in the weirdest places. There was the time I ran into him at the farmer's market while buying my weekly supply of avocados. Then I saw him at my favorite bookstore, browsing the same obscure poetry section I love. We even ended up at the same indie film screening at a local theater. Each time it felt like such a delightful coincidence. Owen joked that it must be destiny, and I'll admit it did feel a bit magical. We started hanging out as friends, grabbing lunch at quirky food trucks, or checking out local art exhibitions together. I found myself looking forward to our encounters, wondering when I'd run into him next. Over time, our friendship grew into something more. I found myself sharing things with Owen that I'd never told anyone else. My dreams, my fears, my silly childhood stories. He was always there to listen, to offer advice, or just to make me laugh when I needed it. On my 26th birthday, Owen surprised me with this incredibly romantic gesture. He texted me in the morning, asking me to meet him at the park where we'd had our first real conversation after the purse incident. When I arrived, I couldn't believe my eyes. He had set up a picnic with all my favorite foods, from the spicy tuna rolls I crave to the chocolate truffles I can never resist. There were fairy lights strung in the trees, softly twinkling as the sun began to set. As we sat there, enjoying the food and the beautiful evening, Owen pulled out a small velvet box. My heart started racing, thinking it might be a ring, but instead, inside was a delicate silver bracelet. It had a small charm that said destiny, a callback to his joke about our continual run-ins. Owen took my hand and told me he'd fallen in love with me. He said that from the moment he saw me rushing into that shared ride, he knew there was something special about me. He asked if I'd be his girlfriend, to make our unexpected encounters a permanent fixture in both our lives. It was so sweet and thoughtful. I said yes without hesitation. The next month, Owen moved into my apartment with me. It felt like such a natural progression. We fell into a comfortable routine, making dinner together, binge-watching our favorite shows, and turning my space into our home. I introduced Owen to my family shortly after he moved in. I was a bit nervous because my family can be pretty protective, especially my dad. They were a bit cautious at first, asking Owen all sorts of questions about his job, he works in IT, his family, and his intentions with me. But Owen handled it all with grace and charm. He won them over with his wit and his obvious affection for me. My mom especially loved him. She was always saying what a catch he was, and how lucky I was to have found such a wonderful man. Things have been great between us. Owen proposed a few months ago with a beautiful speech about how I'd changed his life and how he wanted to spend the rest of it making me as happy as I'd made him. We've been planning our engagement party, set for next month. My parents are thrilled. I feel a little sad for Owen because he has no family and is an orphan. But I always tell him that we are his family now. Yesterday, we went to look at diamond rings. I was so excited to pick out something special, a symbol of our love and commitment. We went to this fancy jewelry store downtown, the kind with plush carpets and champagne for customers. We were looking at different styles, and I had just tried on this gorgeous solitaire that caught the light beautifully. I was admiring how it looked on my hand when a young woman walked into the store. She looked about our age, maybe 29 or so, with long dark hair and a designer handbag. As soon as she saw Owen, her face went white. Then she started yelling. She called Owen David and said he was a liar and a cheat. She told me to be careful, that he cons rich young women. According to her, he expresses his love, makes them believe all sorts of things, then disappears without a trace, leaving them heartbroken and often in financial ruin. I was shocked. I tried to explain that she must have Owen confused with someone else, but she insisted she was certain it was him. She said she'd never forget the face of the man who ruined her life. Owen looked really upset. He denied everything, saying he had no idea who this woman was or why she was saying these things. The woman, who called herself Bella, started to cause a scene. She was crying and yelling, telling me not to make the same mistake she did. Owen grabbed my hand and practically dragged me out of the store, saying we needed to leave before things got worse. On the drive home, I kept asking Owen what that was all about. If it was just a misunderstanding, why didn't we stay and sort it out? But he kept giving vague answers, saying the woman was clearly unstable and he didn't want to make a scene in the store. He said she must have confused him with someone else, and that these things happen sometimes. When we got home, Owen went straight to bed, saying he had a headache from all the stress. I'm sitting here now, completely confused and unsure of what to think. Owen has always been so kind and honest. He's been a constant in my life for 3 years. Could that woman be telling the truth? But if she was, why would Owen have stuck around for so long? I don't know what to do. Part of me wants to believe Owen, to trust in the relationship we've built, but another part keeps replaying that woman's words in my head. She seems so sure, so hurt. And Owen's reaction was off. He's never shied away from confrontation before. In fact, he's always been the type to face problems head-on. I'm torn between my trust in Owen and this nagging doubt that's crept in. Should I confront Owen again, try to find that woman and get more information? Or am I overthinking this whole thing? Has anyone else ever experienced something like this? Any advice would be appreciated. I feel like I'm going crazy, doubting the man I thought I knew so well. Update 1. It's been a week since the incident at the jewelry store, and I feel like I'm living in a completely different reality. Everything has changed, and I'm still trying to process it all. I promised to update you, so here goes. Owen's behavior has changed dramatically since that day. He's become incredibly paranoid, constantly checking up on me and tracking what I'm doing. He calls me multiple times a day when I'm at work, which he's never done before. At first I thought he was just being attentive, maybe worried about me after the shock at the jewelry store. But it's beyond that now. He wants to know where I am, who I'm with, what I'm doing, at all times. When he's not hovering over me, he's barely home. He leaves early in the morning and comes back late at night. When I ask where he's been, he just says he's busy with work and engagement-related stuff. But something doesn't add up. He's always been open about his work before, often sharing funny stories about his co-workers or venting about difficult projects. Now he's vague and dismissive when I ask about his day. I've noticed other changes too. He's become jumpy, frightening at small noises. He's constantly checking his phone, but he angles the screen away from me when he does. Once, I came home early from work and found him hurriedly closing his laptop, looking guilty. When I asked what he was doing, he mumbled something about surprise engagement party plans. But here's the thing, I haven't been entirely honest with you all either. The scene at the jewelry store? That was staged. I set the whole thing up. I know, it sounds crazy. Let me explain. About 2 weeks before the jewelry store incident, I had to go to Boston for a work meeting. It was a quick trip. Fly in the morning, meeting in the afternoon, fly back the next day. After the meeting, I decided to do some shopping since I rarely get to visit Boston. I had also picked up a custom-made picture frame with a photo of Owen that I'd ordered as a surprise anniversary gift. As I was walking down Newbury Street, juggling my shopping bags and admiring the beautiful brownstones, I accidentally bumped into a woman. Owen's photo frame fell out of the bag and hit the ground. I apologized profusely, but as I bent to pick up the frame, I noticed the woman staring at it intensely. She introduced herself as Bella and asked me how I knew the man in the photo. Confused, I explained that he was my fiancé, Owen. Her face fell, and she asked if we could sit down somewhere to talk. Something in her expression made me agree, despite my initial hesitation. We found a nearby cafe and sat down with our coffees. Bella took a deep breath and told me a story that made my blood run cold. She had met a man she knew as David 3 years ago, in almost the exact same way I had met Owen. The shared ride, the forgotten purse, the coincidental meetings, it was all the same. He had charmed her, made her fall in love with him, and then, over time, he had started asking for money. Small amounts at first, then larger ones. By the time she realized what was happening, he had drained her savings account and disappeared. I didn't want to believe her at first. I told her about how Owen had been with me for 3 years, how he'd met my family, how we were planning our engagement party. But as we talked more, the similarities in our stories became impossible to ignore. Bella showed me old pictures of her and David on her phone. It was undeniably Owen. We spent hours talking that day. Bella told me about other women she'd found who had similar stories about Owen David. It was a pattern. He would target women who seemed financially stable, spend a few years gaining their trust and access to their money, and then vanish. Sometimes he'd leave them in debt, having convinced them to take out loans or credit cards in their names. I felt sick, angry, betrayed. But mostly, I felt stupid. How could I have fallen for this? How could I have been so blind? I always prided myself on being smart and independent, but I'd been completely fooled. Bella and I hatched a plan. We decided to confront Owen publicly, to catch him off guard. That's why I suggested going ring shopping. Bella agreed to come to the store and pretend she was just recognizing him for the first time, I thought. Seeing his reaction would give me the confirmation I needed, and it did. His panic, his rush to get out of there, his vague excuses afterward. It all fits with what Bella told me. Since then, I've been pretending everything is normal while gathering more evidence. I've gone through our financial records and found some discrepancies. Small amounts missing here and there, adding up to quite a bit over time. I've also been in touch with some of the other women Bella told me about, and their stories match up perfectly. I know now that the man I thought I knew, the man I thought I loved, doesn't exist. Owen, or David, or whatever his real name is a con artist. And I'm his latest mark. The past week has been the hardest of my life. Every moment I spend with Owen feels like a lie. Every time he touches me or tells me he loves me, I have to fight the urge to scream or cry. I've been making excuses to sleep on the couch, saying I've been having trouble sleeping and don't want to disturb him. In reality, I can't bear to be close to him. I've been in constant contact with Bella and the other victims. We've been sharing information, building a case against Owen David. I've also reached out to a lawyer friend for advice on how to proceed legally. The hardest part has been keeping this from my family. They're so excited about the engagement party, constantly calling with ideas and plans. My mom keeps sending me links to wedding dresses. It breaks my heart to know how devastated they'll be when they find out the truth. I've made up my mind. Tomorrow, I'm going to expose him. I've already contacted my family and some close friends. They were shocked, but they believe me, and they're going to help. I've also reached out to the police with the evidence I've gathered. I'm terrified of confronting Owen. What if he becomes violent? What if he manages to talk his way out of it? But I'm also angry. I want justice. Not just for me, but for all the women he's hurt. I want to make sure he can't do this to anyone else. I've arranged for my brother and a few of his friends to be there when I confront Owen, just in case things get ugly. We're going to do it at my parents' house, under the guise of discussing engagement party details. I'm scared, but I'm also strangely calm. For the first time in weeks, I feel like I'm taking control of my life again. I'm done being a victim. Tomorrow, I will become a survivor. Wish me luck. I'll update you all tomorrow after it's done. And thank you, all of you, for your support and advice throughout this nightmare. It meant more to me than you know. Final update. It's done. Owen has been exposed and is now in police custody. I'm still shaking from the adrenaline, but I wanted to update you all on what happened. This morning, I woke up early and pretended everything was normal. I made breakfast for Owen like I usually do on Saturdays. Pancakes with fresh berries, his favorite. He seemed a bit on edge, probably still paranoid from the jewelry store incident, but he didn't suspect anything. I told him my parents wanted us to come over to discuss some engagement party details. He looked uncomfortable but agreed. We arrived at my parents' house around noon. My mom greeted us with a forced smile. I could tell it was killing her to act normal. My dad couldn't even look Owen in the eye. We all sat in the living room, the tension evident. That's when Bella walked in from the kitchen. Owen's face went pale. He started stammering, trying to make excuses, but I cut him off. I told him I knew everything. About his real identity, about the other women, about the money he'd been slowly siphoning from my accounts. As I spoke, more people started arriving. Other victims Bella had put me in touch with. My friends who were there for support. And finally, 2 police officers I had contacted earlier. Owen tried to run, but my brother and his friends blocked the door. The look on Owen's face when he realized he was cornered. I'll never forget it. It was like watching a mask slip away, revealing the stranger underneath. He tried to talk his way out of it, spinning some story about being framed, about how he loved me and would never hurt me. but his words fell flat. We had too much evidence, too many witnesses. The police officers read him his rights and placed him under arrest. As they were handcuffing him, Owen looked at me with this mixture of anger and something that almost looked like respect. He said, "I underestimated you." Those were the last words he said to me before they took him away. After Owen was gone, we all sat in my parents' living room, shell-shocked. Bella hugged me and thanked me for believing in her. The other victims shared their stories, and we realized the full extent of Owen's cons. He'd been doing this for nearly a decade, moving from city to city, changing his name each time. The police took statements from everyone. They said that with all the evidence we've gathered, plus the testimony from multiple victims, Owen will likely be facing serious charges. They're also investigating to see if he has any accomplices, or if he's wanted for similar crimes in other states. My parents were devastated. My mom couldn't stop crying, saying she should have seen through him. My dad was angry, both at Owen and at himself for not protecting me better. I tried to reassure them that it wasn't their fault, that Owen had fooled everyone. I'm still processing everything. Part of me is relieved it's over, but another part is devastated. I spent 3 years of my life with this man. I thought I knew him. I thought we had a future together. Finding out it was all a lie. It's going to take a long time to come to terms with that. The next few days were a blur of police interviews, talks with lawyers, and tearful conversations with friends and family. I had to go through all of our joint accounts trying to trace where the money had gone. It turns out Owen had been slowly transferring funds to offshore accounts. The lawyers say we might be able to recover some of it, but not all. My family and friends have been incredibly supportive. They're helping me change the locks, close any accounts Owen had access to, and basically erase him from my life. Bella and some of the other victims have suggested starting a support group. I think I might take them up on that offer. The hardest part has been dealing with the emotional fallout. Some days I'm angry, at Owen, at myself for being so gullible. Other days I'm just sad, mourning the relationship I thought I had. I've started seeing a therapist to help me work through it all. I know I have a long road ahead. There will be legal proceedings to deal with, and I'm still working on rebuilding my financial security. But I also feel stronger than I ever have. I faced my worst fear, that the person I loved wasn't who I thought they were. And I came out the other side. To anyone reading this who might be in a similar situation, trust your instincts. If something feels off, investigate. Don't be afraid to ask questions or seek help. And remember, it's not your fault. Con artists like Owen are experts at manipulation. The shame is on them, not on us. Thank you all for your support throughout this crazy situation. Your comments and messages have meant more to me than you know. I'll update again if there are any major developments with the case, but for now, I'm going to focus on healing and moving forward. Here's to new beginnings and learning to trust again, starting with trusting myself.